welcome to this week's Movie Math, where the 2016 box office truly belongs to Disney. As it would seem, everything in the movie business does these days. But well played, Disney. It didn't happen by accident. Although I have to say, I'm not even really talking about Doctor Strange with this statement. I mean, sure, the Marvel movie opened at number 1, but I think the reason it's not a huge box office headline is that Doctor Strange opened just right. Meaning it didn't underperform, but it didn't overperform either. I mean, there was such strong momentum going into its stateside release. Again, all beautifully engineered by Disney, that it ended up meeting expectations. So at the end of the day, it was just more business as usual. But where Disney was able to make quite the headline was their worldwide tally to date for the year, and that's that they've passed 6 billion, the first time that Disney has ever done so. But get this, it wasn't the first time that any studio had ever done it in Hollywood. Yes, another studio beat Disney to the punch. Something that's pretty much unfathomable these days. But last year it was Universal that was the first studio ever to reach $6 billion worldwide, thanks to an incredibly impressive slate. But it doesn't look like Universal has any such impressive slates on the horizon, so it might have just been lightning striking once there. The planets aligned just to help another studio the one time, which I guess is really, that's a really good way to divide the studios. Most of them, will fall into a great box office year, but Disney's engineering them, as you'll see as we, talk about the specifics of Disney's dominance. But yes, Universal was the first to reach $6 billion worldwide last year in 2015 when they had movies like Fast and Furious 7, Jurassic World, which infamously beat out Avengers Age of Ultron, shocking many a Marvelite, but Kevin Feige very graciously tipped his hat to Universal, probably realizing that he and his studio would surpass them very, very soon. And then also even Minions last year. And Universal, also, they were the fastest to get to 6 billion. Disney was not able to beat them out in that regard. But Universal ended 2015 with 6.89 billion, very close to 7. So now the name of the game is for Disney to beat that number and to have the highest, worldwide annual gross in Hollywood history. And they might just be able to do it because they've only just passed 6 billion, but Doctor Strange is only just getting started, and they still have Moana and Rogue One to go. So they're definitely within striking distance. But let's take a look at Disney's box office dominance. It is truly a thing of beauty. So the top 4 movies of the year, as we've discussed before, are from Disney, and 3 of them are in the $1 billion club. Now, and also, as we get closer to the end of the year, the potential films from other studios that could, upset that straight flush for Disney is dwindling. I think we only really have left Warner Brothers' Fantastic Beasts, Sony's Passengers, and Universal's Sing. I think those are the only 3 films left on the docket that could potentially, upset Disney from totally dominating the $1 billion club and potentially even the top of the entire box office. Now, as for Doctor Strange, how well did it do? Well, as we discussed, it just had to beat Ant-Man's 57 million not to be a total loser, right? But it easily beat Ant-Man's 57. But it was so strong going into its domestic stateside release due to impressive box office overseas, the projections kept getting pushed up. And as I said last week, maybe it'll do close to Guardians of the Galaxy money with 94. And what do you know? It actually came close to that with 85 million at number 1. So if it had beaten Guardians of the Galaxy or matched it, that would have been a better headline. But where it is now is that it actually matched another Marvel movie, Thor: The Dark World. And no one wants to be in the same sentence as Thor: The Dark World from November 2013. And those are actually the only 2 Marvel releases for November in the history of the MCU. And also, although Thor Ragnarok is set for their next November release a year from now, November 3rd, or 11/3, as I wrote in my notes, 2017. So I actually, as we've also discussed, this ended up being a really beautifully positioned release date. Coming off of Halloween, that everyone partied themselves out for Halloween, took a little break from the movies, as we saw with last weekend's box office, and even the weekend before was a little bit weak in terms of the films at the box office. So really, people hadn't gone to the movies for 2 whole weeks, right? I mean, a bunch of people saw a Medea Halloween kind of, but overall there was, everyone hadn't been to the movies in a while. And actually now, as soon as Halloween ends here in the States, it's Christmas, like overnight. Like everybody puts their Christmas decorations up, sometimes even before Halloween. So the stores hit the ground running. And I think to some degree, so does the movie season now. That as soon as Halloween is over, everyone goes, Christmas time, holidays, let's go out, let's go see a movie. So that 2-week run-up was absolutely fantastic, and it gave Disney a really fantastic, I was going to say win, but again, it wasn't huge. I would say everything went according to plan, and it was a beautiful plan. So if I were Disney, I would maybe want to lock up the first weekend in November after 2 $85 million openings. They already have Thor Ragnarok set for the same weekend next year, but I would probably maybe want to lock it up going forward because Disney already has the first weekend of May locked up for their Marvel movies. They've decided that they've planted the Star Wars flag in December for episodes. The spin-offs, this first spin-off is going there, but I believe Han Solo will be a summer release. Thanksgiving is where they put Disney animated movies, be they Disney Animation or Pixar. And now, as I said, I would consider locking up the first weekend of November for other Marvel releases. Now, I also think it's worth noting that one of the reasons Doctor Strange did so well is that the visuals were such an important component of the Doctor Strange experience. So they really were able to get people to fork over the extra surcharges for 3D, IMAX, or in many cases, for both. So that gave them a huge bounce in ticket sales. 3D and IMAX overall have been waning as people are like, is it really worth the extra money? But for Doctor Strange, everyone, and myself included, said it resoundingly it was. So people spent that money, so that I think is another reason that you saw such a strong performance there. As for the audience breakdown, interestingly enough, 61% of the audience was male with only 39% female, leading me to ask, what happened to all the Cumberbitches? Also, though, 58% was over the age of 25, so I think that's surprising. Maybe that speaks to, Benedict Cumberbatch's appeal. And he did bring people in. 31% of people who were surveyed said that they showed up because or at least partially showed up because they were Benedict Cumberbatch fans. Ooh, Sherlock fandom. There was a lot of buzz when he went to shoot in Nepal, and he had Sherlock fans even there. I was, checking out the Vanity Fair article on Benedict Cumberbatch, and they talked about the fact that someone ran the headline, yes, it's official, Benedict Cumberbatch can't go anywhere, and I thought that was pretty fun. And now you haven't seen that reflected in his other work so much, but it's nice to see that when he's in the right property, people do come out to see him, be it Sherlock or, in this case, a Marvel movie as Doctor Strange. But then 56% showed up because it was simply a Marvel movie. So that's some good brand loyalty right there. It does make me wonder what's going to happen with Brie Larson, because I don't think she has any brand loyalty. I don't think she'd be able to get to 31%. I mean, she is an Oscar winner. She's respected, but she doesn't have the Sherlock fandom built in like Benedict Cumberbatch did. So hopefully there's lots of big special effects in her movie. Now, as for whether or not Doctor Strange will have any legs, I'm not sure. It didn't open at the century mark. It's the biggest opening of the year outside of the century mark. But you know what? Neither did Zootopia. Zootopia actually opened with 10 million less than Doctor Strange and got to $1 billion anyway. So Doctor Strange certainly could play quite well. However, there is a lot of heavy competition coming up, a lot of it friendly fire from Disney, and of course Fantastic Beasts is very similar, and that's opening in just 2 weeks. Doctor Strange did get an A cinema score, but everything got an A cinema score this weekend. It was like, man, people are just drunk on new movies and being so happy that it's the holiday season. Although I do have to wonder if maybe comic book overkill might kill the legs for Doctor Strange and how high it can get. There are just so many comic book movies coming out, and as I tweeted yesterday when someone, or actually on Sunday recently, someone said that they went with their friends. A BTT viewer told me that he went with his friends. I think it was Stephen Owsley. He said, I went with my friends and they're just comic book movied out and they didn't like Doctor Strange. And I have to say, the people I went to see it with again on the weekend felt the exact same way. I was shocked, but also concerned for the future of comic book films. Make your money while you can, Hollywood. I think big franchise pictures like Jurassic World aren't any danger, like Fast and Furious 8. But I think as comic book movies, and I discussed this on Morning Movie News, as comic book movies become more convoluted in their logic because they're so interconnected, and it becomes closer to a comic book reading experience, I think that might start to, cast off some mainstream moviegoers who aren't into that kind of storytelling storytelling, and it's one of the reasons they don't read comics. I think the movies, I always say movies shouldn't involve homework, and I think to some degree they're starting to maybe involve a little bit more than they should, at least in these interconnected cinematic universes. We'll see what happens, but so far everything's fine. Now, as I said, the 2-week drought was good news for everyone. It helped Disney, but it also helped Dreamworks and Mel Gibson. Everybody was just drunk on movies. Everything got an A. Everything had a good Rotten Tomatoes score. So, great news. Now, Dreamworks came in second place with Trolls with 46.5. That's actually quite good for Dreamworks Animation, particularly for an original property. Now, they didn't come up with Trolls. That's based on a popular toy from a while ago, but still, for something that's new to DreamWorks, that's a very good opening number. So I would expect when they cross over to Universal as part of their new deal, they're now owned by Universal, that starts in 2018, don't be surprised if Trolls 2 is somewhere on that list of upcoming movies. Then number 3, there was a pretty big drop to number 3. You go from 46.5 to like around 15, but still, it's very good for Hacksaw Ridge and Mel Gibson. And it's great just to be number 3, that no other movie was able to squeak in there. And, I think Mel Gibson and Hacksaw Ridge wanted to just be part of the group, partying at the top of the box office, and they are. Also, Mel Gibson as a director hasn't lost any ground in a decade. I mean, there is this little thing called inflation, but at the same time, I think the fact that he hasn't lost any ground despite his reputation problems is impressive. I mean, in comparison, Birth of a Nation opened just a few weeks ago to number 6 with only 7 million. So Hacksaw Ridge is definitely in a better position. And also, speaking of award season, Mel Gibson here is looking for a marathon performance, not a sprint. I think this is a strong opening. I think it might make people who were unsure whether or not they wanted to see Hacksaw Ridge second guess that and say maybe we should go. And I also think it makes the film look like it has enough momentum for people to maybe feel okay about voting for it during awards season. So, it's a wide release also, so I think that, it couldn't have that big per theater average. So since it doesn't have that headline, I think the really important number is going to be its second weekend hold. So we're really going to pay attention to how Hacksaw Ridge performs next weekend. If it can get a 30% or less hold, that'll really help it during awards season. Now, speaking of holds, the lowest hold in the top 10 went to The Accountant, woohoo, in its 4th week, no less, with just a mere 30% drop. So hang on there, Ben Affleck. While his competitor, Tom Cruise's Jack Reacher, actually slipped past The Accountant for a 43% drop in its 3rd week. So it looks like The Accountant is the big winner there. But again, they still had to end up splitting the exact same audience, and I think both would have performed better if they had opened further apart. But they opened a week apart. Then the biggest drop in the weekend box office was Inferno in just its 2nd weekend with almost 60%. That is really embarrassing. And I wouldn't be surprised if it not only washes out Tom Hanks' Sully win at the box office, it's like you have a big win, but you also have a big loss. So we'll just put you at neutral there, Hanks. But also for award season, I think that would kind of take some of the Sully momentum away as well. Because, I think the Inferno stink was the last thing that a lot of people have associated with Hanks now, and I think that's not going to help Sully. Let's not pretend Sully ever had a big awards chance to begin with, quite frankly, but now I think it's really out of the count. Now, back to the specialty market where awards movies really flourish. Moonlight is knocking at the top 10. It's now up to the 11th place as it added 47 theaters, and it was able to hold Loving at bay. Loving opened this weekend in 4 theaters, just as Moonlight did 2 weeks ago. But while Moonlight opened with 100,000 plus per theater, Loving only had 39,000 per theater average. Now that's not bad, and it's certainly very pleasant for Loving, but the reality of the situation is that we have a narrowing field for frontrunners for the awards season. Only so many quote-unquote black films are going to be final contenders, right? You have Hacksaw Ridge, you have La La Land, there are a lot of you have Jackie, you've got Nocturnal Animals, White Hollywood's got a lot of entries. So they're going to pick a couple frontrunners. This is just the way the system works right now. And so there's a little bit of a qualifying race going on here for who those contenders are. I think Moonlight almost definitely definitely will be one, considering the buzz and the box office heat that it now has. And I think the other one is probably going to be Fences, to be perfectly honest with you, because of the pedigree of that project. Denzel Washington, Viola Davis. It's an adaptation of a play that the same group performed on Broadway, where everyone got a Tony. So Fences is really like Hollywood royalty. Hidden Figures is also trying to get in there, but I think that Loving and Hidden Figures just might not make the cut. They might show up like at the Golden Globes, perhaps, or something like that. But when you get to the Oscars, I think that Moonlight and Fences are going to be really jockeying for. They're going to be the front runners to keep the diversity factor in there. That is for this coming weekend. I think that Doctor Strange will probably stay at number 1, because even if it drops 50%, it'll even 60%, it'll easily best The Arrival, which is supposed to open at 22. But that would be amazing for Amy Adams, who used to open like that back in the day, when she was just first coming onto the scene, with her Oscar nomination and Enchanted. But she's had a couple of flops as of late, so this would be a great return to form for her, and really also particularly nice considering some coverage in the Hollywood Reporter where a number of Hollywood studios said, why can't Amy Adams' character in The Arrival be a dude? So, good for her. Although, if it was a dude, would it have opened bigger? Who knows? It's a step-by-step progress. Then also Almost Christmas opens, and that's expected to do, speaking of Medea, what a Medea Christmas did a few years ago. It won't match the Best Man Holidays opening, which was $30 million, but that was, it was something of a brand. There had been a long time between movies, but still, Almost Christmas isn't expected to be a huge hit, but a solid one instead. So that's the weekend box office. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be curious to hear what you think of not just Doctor Strange, but Disney's performance overall this year, and also how you feel. Do you want to see a Trolls 2? And also, what do you think of Hacksaw Ridge? Do you think it's off to a good start, not only for its box office prospects, but its awards prospects as well? And of course, how do you feel about that controversial statement I made? It's not my controversy. I'm just acknowledging a controversy. But how do you feel about the way awards season still works? Although, don't kid yourself. It's also like there's only so many independent films. Everybody's getting stereotyped here. But how do you feel about black talent competing this year? And who do you think are the front runners? Write your thoughts down below, and you can check out some more videos right now.